Hello, how are you? In this video, we are going to explain the piezoelectric effect and some properties of quartz in general and its integration into the Metayantra pranic devices. Firstly, how does it work? As always, I like to go back a little into the history of how I've been the discovery of these things, and in this matter, an important personality is Nikola Tesla. We will mention him again later, who in his book The Problem of Increasing Human Energy, where he mentions that everything in the universe is energy, and everything therefore has a vibration, and that there are certain elements that by resonance can affect other bodies, or particles that by resonance can affect other particles. Call it electromagnetism, which is a phenomenon that by vibration can affect other elements like a magnet. We can move a magnet with an electromagnetic field. Then under this principle we can understand that quartz can also, under the right conditions, another vibration modifier for elements or bodies. This would explain why it is used in alternative therapies for more than 5,000 years in ancient civilizations like the Chinese, who use them until today, or the Japanese, for example, in Reiki or many ancestral therapies that are still in use. For example, the Greeks who used powder of hematite and rubbed it for warriors. Cleopatra is said to use lapis lazuli powder as makeup, but it had a meaning beyond. The Egyptians also used a crystal on their forehead to bury their dead, and they thought it was a kind of guide to another plane or the other life. So all this explains a lot why by resonance there may be an affectation of a body to another. A simple example of resonance is to put two guitars facing each other, play one of the strings of a guitar on the other guitar. That same string will vibrate by resonance. The waves are irradiated and find elements that vibrate at the same frequency. Let's say they have harmonics, just like in music, that are going to be affected, or that they will vibrate along with a frequency, not just the same frequency, but there will be harmonics. These are harmonic tones. Although there is no scientific evidence to prove that quartz alone has an affectation or have a vibration that affects others' bodies, if we integrate electromagnetism, we can prove quartz vibrate. Is that thanks to James Clerk Maxwell's equations, which are a headache for many engineers because they are very complex. He through experiments synthesized all the properties of electricity and magnetism and created what is called the electromagnetic theory, applying that principle or phenomenon called electromagnetism along with the quartz. We prove quartz vibration, and that's what I'm going to explain. With the reverse piezoelectric effect, we now have scientific proof that quartz can affect other bodies by vibrations and resonances, and we can call it a quantum resonance, which I will talk about in another video. I will go breaking down what are the devices piece by piece, and that explains why crystals are used in ancient therapies. Sometimes we think they were more archaic or less advanced, but I think they had another way of seeing life, and they had another kind of technology that got lost, and now we are rescuing it. Today, applying electromagnetism, we already have evidence that it works. It can affect the vibrational fields of the nervous system. The quartz alone with electromagnetism is important. It emits signals to the brain. The brain interprets signals by electromagnetism. The brain is even an antenna. If you place a car control, for example, of car alarm and you move away enough so that you no longer have a range, then put it in your skull and squeeze it, your brain will amplify the signal. There are experiments, so you can search on YouTube. It does work. Or you can do it by yourself. Then there you have proof that your brain is a transmitting antenna. If it is a transmitting antenna, then is also a receiver antenna, capable of receiving signals, and by vibrations in this case, of a quartz. With the help of electromagnetic field, you can transmit signals to the brain. There is also an experiment where it is shown that DNA is also an antenna, and that it can also be modified to a certain level. We will not mutate, but it has the ability to change its structure by means of resonance or vibration. What allopathic medicine knows as genetic diseases. What is quartz? We are going to start there. First, the real name is crystal. Quartz is a crystal The crystal name comes from the Greek word kristallos, that was originated by the name kryo that means cold. They, seeing the shape of quartz, they thought it was ice that did not melt at ambient temperature, which needed more heat to melt. To make it water, then they thought it was ice and that's why they put that name to it. Then the name crystal remained because of its crystalline form. Citrine amethyst, blissful quartz, and many varieties of crystals are the same. They are crystals and they are quartz. You can call them quartz too. The purest form is silicon dioxide. A part of the Unitarian molecule would be this. If you look at it as like a pyramid, it has some axes here, and there is the pyramid of 3 tips. This is silicon, and it is composed of 4 oxygen, only that each oxygen is attached to another silicon. But there are always 2 oxygen atoms, that's why CO2 is the formula. The atoms are linked by covalent links. Covalent bonds are links where the elements share electrons to gather 8 electrons in their last layer. In this case, the oxygen has 6 electrons and silicon has 4, seeing it so silicon gives 4 electrons, 1 to each oxygen, and this oxygen is going to give 1 to each silicon, so silicon will share, so silicon is left with 4 positive charges because it loses 4 electrons, and oxygen will be left with 2 negative charges because it wins 2 silicon electrons. It is a very strong bond. That's why crystal is hard, because there are electrical atomic forces that are very, very, very powerful. Well, for physics and chemistry, quartz is formed with well-defined patterns and ordered in a crystalline formation that keeps, let's say, repeating, like a fractal. Is a pattern properly ordered? In the case of quartz, the oxide of silicon come together like this. Here is a particle, the pyramid we saw. Here is another, and so on. Black balls are silicons and colored ones are oxygen. I have not enough on the same color, but I hope you can understand. And the curious or important thing that we have to consider are these hexagonal prisms forms. This is a prism face and this is another, and several others are forming, like a honeycomb, thus formed quartz, and in large or in whatever size have frequencies of resonance. That is to say, resonate to certain frequencies. Also, if we put it into an electromagnetic field, we can accentuate certain harmonic resonance frequencies, and mitigate certain that are called secondary. These are operational frequencies in electronics. Depending on dimensions and characteristics, quartz is not always pure. All variations of quartz have elements trapped in these structures that give them others properties, other colors, etc. For example, the Hindus in the Vedas already had specifically each type of quartz properties defined. This pollution is made BT an alien element. What properties does quartz have? It does not conduct electricity by itself, does not drive electricity. You have to apply other effects for electron flow. They have the piezoelectric property that it is the main point that we are going to deal with here. Also, thermoluminescence. This means that if we apply a lot of heat to quartz, it will generate light. It happens due to issues of cosmic ray absorption that we are not going to touch right now. We're going to see it later. Right now we will focus on the piezoelectricity. The applications are many. From an electric lighter, when you press the button it releases a spark. That's because the quartz was hit by a little hammer. The quartz watch like this, it's that simple. It has a small quartz that controls the frequency of second-hand swing, and it's so precise that we count the time today with it. One thing I say to many people who come to me ask about the amount of quartz on the device, it really doesn't matter. What matters to us is it to be present and that is properly placed. Is like saying that putting 3 kilos of quartz on a clock will increase its precision, but in reality it just needs a small crystal to work. As long as it is present and well placed on the clock, what we want is to control the device operating frequency, in this case the clock. Also, in the sonar is used for people who think they need a lot of pressure on it to release the piezoelectric effect. I can tell how it works. Stay in the video so you can understand that the pressure can be really minimal and it works, and there are technical applications in that. There are also ultrasound applications and many other optical devices are present. Technical applications of quartz. Thanks to its existence and natural formation of quartz, we have technology like cell phones. Transmitter and receiver antennas have quartz that controls the operation frequency of these devices. Your cell phone has quartz. Your radio, when tuning a station, has a quartz and a resonance circuit. Then the quartz and the properties of quartz are real, not esoteric. What is the difference between a crystal and a common glass? Because the glass is also a dioxide of silicon. To exemplify, glass is silica dioxide molecules stacked one after another without order. In fact, they do fall apart. All glasses they are flowing down in a lot of time will be thicker at the bottom than above because they are only stacked one above the other. By the other hand, quartz has such a structure, well ordered, and it has a strength and a hardness that is not going to yield unless we break it or we submit to electric currents or voltages that we will now explain. Okay. What is the crystal piezoelectricity in general? Piezoelectricity is a phenomenon or a property of the crystals. The name comes from the Greek piezein, which means to squeeze. When we squeeze a crystal or a quartz, atoms that are positively charged will move, so the 4 positive charges on silicon and the 2 negative in oxygen when squeezed will be rearranged. The hexagon that is here, I will show you a simple example to understand it, and they will generate a potential difference that creates a voltage. There is a part of the quartz is a positive charge and the other negatively, or one is more positive than the other, and a flow of electrons will be activated in that space, which creates an electric current. There are natural crystals or natural piezoelectric elements like tourmaline, citrine. And there are others that are artificial, like the tantalum or lithium nitrate, that are elements that when subjected to a polarization they become piezoelectric elements. This piezoelectric effect is reversible. If we stop squeezing the crystal, the electrical current will stop. Like everything in physics, the reverse effect is also present. If we put a voltage into a crystal, the crystal is going to deform. For example, a practical application of the inverse piezoelectric effect are the speakers or headphones. There are a couple of wires with a potential difference between each one arriving at a crystal which vibrates and generates sound. For example, microphones would be the piezoelectric effect. A pressure of air moves a membrane that moves the crystal and creates an electrical current. Here is an example also for you to see that you don't need a very strong pressure. The simple air pressure of your voice generates enough force and pressures in the quartz to generate a voltage. They are small currents, of course, but very, very, very accurate. That's why they are used in sonars and watches. The piezoelectric effect is by pressure. The sonar works with small quartz submerged in water that can detect pressures of a boat or a submarine that is up to 10 kilometers of distance. It detects the pressure. Then the pressure is very, very small and generates an electric current. So you can see that we don't need thousands of kilos of pressure so that the piezoelectric effect work. I mention this because sometimes there are many comments claiming that there is not enough pressure to make the quartz in our device vibrate. There's much more pressure than it generates your voice. The air or the one that generates the boat or submarine kilometers from distance, and in all these cases there is an electrical current involved. If we subject the quartz to a magnetic field with a coil, with an antenna, or with an electromagnetic signal, we can interact with the quartz. The ions of metal that are loaded because there are spinning electrons around will affect quartz, pollute it, and they cause an inverse piezoelectric effect. I must say that if the piezoelectric effect is present, it won't exclude the inverse piezoelectric effect. When we deform the crystal with a magnetic field, that crystal is also releasing current by its deformation. In an electrical motor, the magnet is moving thanks to the magnetic field of the coil, but the magnet is also generating a magnetic field that is feeding the coil. The same type of phenomenon is happening here. The frequency that is operating in the coil over the quartz is radio frequency. Quartz vibrates. This is because it is an alternate current. Then the quartz is going to start vibrating at the desired frequency. Remember, we saw that a part of the silicon dioxide molecule is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4 oxygen and a silicon in the middle, all linked by covalent bonds. The silicon has 4 electrons that is sharing 1 to each oxygen, and the oxygen has 6 and is sharing 1 with the silicon. All this to group up 8 electrons. This oxygen is always connected to another silicon to complete those 8 pairs. This is the Unitarian molecule of crystal that forms an hexagon. Here are seen 3 pyramidal structures. This is one. This is another. And this is the other. United. One like the one from the beginning, but united. The blacks are the silicons, which are loaded with 4 positive charges. An oxygen with 2 negative. The caps will represent this structure. Just like that. Silicon with 4 positive charges. Oxygen with 2 negative charges. This is a section of the quartz molecule. And what happens when we press it is that we do this. Then we have 2 layers. One with 4 negative charges, and another with 8 positive charges. Here is a flow of current towards there in this part. In general, it is more positively charged this side than this side. So what matter for a current is the potential difference, then the current is going to start doing this in the quartz structure. And this is how the piezoelectric effect is simply explained. What I mentioned about that quartz vibrates is similar to those LC resonant circuits of a radio tuner. So you can describe the quartz as a natural tuner, a tuner of natural frequencies. Vibration or crystal vibration frequency depends on its dimensions. The larger a crystal, its vibration is going to take longer to create, and a smaller crystal is going to vibrate faster. Not at very high frequencies such as synthetic quartz. In the case of natural quartz, this vibration is like music or sound, is real, is physical, and just like in musical instruments, repeated. This can be called quantum resonance. I will talk about that in another video. Here I leave you also an image of synthetic crystals used in transmission antennas or LC resonant circuits. The LC resonance circuit refers to oscillating inductance and capacitance circuits. Quartz is a circuit, or it works like an LC circuit, and its inductance and capacitance depends on the physical dimensions of quartz. If you want to dive in a little more, here I leave you the link where it is all explained about other resonant circuits. Well then, now we know that if quartz is subject to an alternate current or a magnetic field, a vibration is generated on the quartz. If we submerge this quartz on a mixture of a viscoelastic polymer as the resin we use, this vibration will be transmitted to all the fluid. It is the same principle that is used in the sonar. When you have a metallic object or something that moves into the water, those vibrations are transmitted by water into the quartz. So it is also scientifically proved, when that vibration transmits to the fluid or polymer component, creates ultrasound, just like in medical ultrasound or in the sonar. So, let's go deep into the application of the piezoelectric effect, and the inverse piezoelectric effect in the Metayantra devices. First of all, I want to make clear that there are certain requirements for these principles to be fulfilled, and that's why they are built in a specific way. Not at random and no metal thrown out without order. They have an order. The metal used has to be magnet wire, so that one string is isolated from the other, creating layers. Also has to have a coil properly winded and manufactured, capable of generating an electromagnetic field. Right now you will see a video where you can notice how the magnetic field of the coil is moving a magnet that is only created with a properly manufactured coil. Besides, the resin must be a polymeric resin, so the quartz can transmit its vibration to the entire element, to the entire device, and all the device get the quartz frequency. This converts the MPD, a potentializer of all the benefits of quartz, if you believe in quartz properties. Then having it in a Metayantra device potentializes it exponentially. The quartz must be placed in the center between these two layers made by the coil. The main matter is to be in the middle so that it is on the field. What happens already inside the device? I'm going to get a little closer. First of all, the resin has to be a viscoelastic polymer, so you have the quartz vibration, so when drying adopts the quartz geometric patterns. Second, the resin compresses quartz. We use the sonar as an example to show that you don't need impressive pressure of thousands of kilos to generate a current. You only need a little pressure to begin to generate a difference of potential in quartz, and there is a quartz current. Quartz also will be fed by the magnetic field created by the coil and create the inverse piezoelectric effect described earlier. The magnetic field generated by the coil is a toroid. If we see it transversely, this is a toroid section, and electrons are flowing in and towards the quartz. According to quantum mechanics and by the principle of uncertainty of Heisenberg, we can't accurately know the position of and speed of an electron, but in this case in the center we know its location is in the center and is in what is called potential. Well, that opens the door to the zero-point energy. Zero-point energy, even able to create virtual particles, are jumping between existence and no existence, are appearing, disappearing, and are met due to the Heisenberg principle. The principle of Heisenberg states that the position and the momentum of a particle in quantum mechanics cannot be precisely known simultaneously. If the particle is confined in a potential well, in this case created by quartz, then your position is known. Should be in the well, but the particle cannot have moment zero, then it will live there. There must be one residual energy in the empty space to know for sure that there is no energy in a given volume of space. It would have to be measured by the infinite. The energy of emptiness has the power to create particles that exist only for a very short time, called quantum fluctuations of vacuum or virtual particles. Quartz is also regulating the frequency of the current movement in the coil. So we proved that the Metayantra pranic device, MPD, is a vibration activator of quartz, and an exponential potentializer of its benefits.